Book 3, the Book of the Divine Mother, Canto 3, the House of the Spirit and the New Creation. A mightier task remained than all he had done. To that he turned from which all being comes. So a mightier task remained than all he had done already, and to that he turned from which all being comes. A sign attending from the secrecy, which knows the truth ungrasped behind our thoughts, and guards the world with its all-seeing gaze. In the unapproachable stillness of his soul, intense, one-pointed, monumental, lone, patient he sat like an incarnate hope, motionless on a pedestal of prayer. A strength he sought that was not yet on earth, help from a power too great for mortal will. A light of a truth now only seen afar, a sanction from his high omnipotent source, but from the appalling heights there stooped no voice. The timeless lids were closed, no opening came. So, you see, the name of this canto is The House of the Spirit and the New Creation. After he has attained to liberation, self-realization, complete freedom, then Ashwapati realizes there is something else that he has to do which has never been done before. And, this truth that he is trying to bring down is a force or a new power that has never come down on earth before into mortal man. And it is something that is very difficult to bring down, and even when he is trying to reach for it in the appalling heights, he is getting no response. So he starts with this chapter in this way. A neutral, helpless void oppressed the years. In the texture of our bound humanity, he felt the stark resistance, huge and dumb, of our inconscient and unseeing base, the stubborn mute rejection in life's depths, the ignorant no in the origin of things, a veiled collaboration with the night, even in himself survived and hid from his view, still something in his earthly being kept its kinship with the inconscient whence it came. A shadowy unity with a vanished past, treasured in an old world frame, was lurking there, secret, unnoted by the illumined mind, and in subconscious whispers and in dream, still murmured at the mind's and spirit's choice. So this ignorant no in the origin of things and this veiled collaboration with the night survived despite the, his seeing the Divine Mother and the adoration of the Divine Mother. Something still survived, and that is what he became aware of. Still murmured at the mind's and spirit's choice. Its treacherous elements spread like slippery grains, hoping the incoming truths might stumble and fall. And old ideal voices wandering moaned and pleaded for a heavenly leniency to the gracious imperfections of our earth and the sweet weaknesses of our mortal state. This now he willed to discover and exile. So he noticed this, he saw it in himself. He also saw that earth had a very massive resistance to this truth and this new force that he was trying to bring down. And he said first, he started working on it in himself to remove it, and then of course we'll try for the earth. And there is this hoping the incoming truth might stumble and fall, and old ideal voices wandered, moaned, and pleaded for a heavenly leniency. Obviously something, it had to be removed and was refusing to go to the gracious imperfections of our earth and the sweet weaknesses of our mortal state. This now he willed to discover and exile, the element in him betraying God. All nature's recondite spaces were stripped bare, all her dim crypts and corners searched with fire, where refugee instincts and unshaped revolts could shelter find in darkness' sanctuary against the white purity of heaven's cleansing flame. All seemed to have perished that was undivine, yet some minutest dissident might escape, and still a center lurk of the blind force. For the inconscient, too, is infinite. The more its abysses we insist to sound, the more it stretches endlessly. Then, lest a human cry should spoil the truth, he tore desire up from its bleeding roots. Look at the wonderful expression here in Savitri. Lest a human cry should spoil the truth, he tore desire up from its bleeding roots and offered to the gods the vacant place. Thus could he bear the touch immaculate. Last and mightiest transformation came, and then only could the last and mightiest transformation come. His soul was all in front, like a great sea, flooding the mind and body with its waves. His being spread to embrace the universe, united the within and the without, to make of life a cosmic harmony, an empire of the immanent divine. In this tremendous universality, not only his soul, nature, and mind sense included every soul and mind in his, but even the life of flesh and nerve was changed and grew one flesh and nerve with all that lives. He felt the joy of others as his joy. He bore the grief of others as his grief. So he became totally universalized. His universal sympathy upbore, immense like ocean, the creation's load, as earth upbears all being sacrifice, thrilled with the hidden transcendence, joy, and peace. There was no more division's endless scroll. One grew the Spirit's secret unity. All nature felt again the single bliss. There was no cleavage between soul and soul. There was no barrier between world and God. Overpowered were form and memory's limiting line. The covering mind was seized and torn apart. It was dissolved and now no more could be. The one consciousness that made the world was seen. All now was luminosity and force. Abolished in its last thin fainting trace, the circle of the little self was gone. So the last thin fainting trace of the circle of the little self, the individual self, was lost, and the separate being could no more be felt. It disappeared and knew itself no more, lost in the Spirit's wide identity. His nature grew a movement of the all, exploring itself to find that all was he. His soul was a delegation of the all that turned from itself to join the one supreme. Transcendent was the human formula. Man's heart that had obscured the inviolable assumed the mighty beatings of a god's. His seeking mind seized in the truth that knows. His life was a flow of the universal life. He stood fulfilled on the world's highest line, awaiting the ascent beyond the world, awaiting the descent, the world to save. A splendor and a symbol wrapped the earth. Serene epiphanies looked, and hallowed vasts surrounded. Wise infinitudes were close, and bright remotenesses leaned near and kin. Sense failed in that tremendous lucency. Ephemeral voices from his hearing fell, and thought potent no more, sank large and pale, like a tired god into mysterious seas. The robes of mortal thinking were cast down, leaving his knowledge bare to absolute sight. So the robes of mortal thinking were cast down in Ashwapati, leaving his knowledge bare to absolute sight. Fate's driving ceased, and nature's sleepless spur. The athlete heavings of the will were stilled in the omnipotent's unmoving peace. Life in his members lay down, vast and mute. Naked, unwalled, unterrified, it bore the immense regard of immortality. So even life and mind both became absolutely still. Life lay down vast and mute, and naked, unwalled, unterrified, it bore the immense regard of immortality. The last movement died, and all at once grew still. A weight that was the unseen transcendence hand laid on his limbs the spirit's measureless seal. Infinity swallowed him into shoreless trance. It's a wonderful, wonderful description that of Ashwapati's yoga and Sri Aurobindo's yoga, especially after the liberation of the soul and after his complete freedom from the self, what we call as the highest pinnacle of yoga. That's why the mother says Sri Aurobindo's yoga begins where other yoga ends. Why? Because most yogas end with the nirvanic experience of liberation, the experience of moksha and so on. After that, Sri Aurobindo realizes that there is something that has to be brought down to change human earth and human nature and the world. And that power is something that the earth is resisting with its tremendous resistance. The whole inconscience of the earth and of humanity and of man and everybody, even in himself, he could see those traces. And that is what he's then. And the only way he can do that is through the description that we've just read. As one who sets his sail towards mysteried shores, driven through huge oceans by the breath of God, the fathomless below, the unknown around, his soul abandoned the blind star-field space. Afar from all that makes the measured world, plunging to hidden eternities, it withdrew back from mind's foaming surface to the vasts, voiceless within us in omniscient sleep. Above the imperfect reach of word and thought, beyond the sight that seeks support of form, lost in deep tracks of superconscient light, or voyaging in blank featureless nothingness, soul in the trackless incommensurable, or past not self and selflessness. Transgressing the dream shores of conscious mind, he reached at last his sempiternal base. On sorrowless heights, no winging cry disturbs, pure and untouched, above this mortal play, is spread the spirit's hushed, immobile air. There no beginning is and there no end. There is the stable force of all that moves. There the aeonic laborer is at rest. There turns no keyed creation in the void, no giant mechanism watched by a soul. There creaks no fate-turned huge machinery. The marriage of evil with good within one breast, the clash of strife in the very clasp of love, the dangerous pain of life's experiment in the values of inconsequence and chance, the peril of mind's gamble, throwing our lives as stake in a wager of indifferent cards, and the shifting lights and shadows of the idea falling upon the surface consciousness, and in the dream of a mute witness soul, creating the error of a half-seen world where knowledge is a seeking ignorance, life steps a stumbling series without suit, its aspect of fortuitous design, its equal measure of the true and false, In that immobile and immutable realm, find no access, no cause, no right to live. There only reigns the Spirit's motionless power, poised in itself through still eternity, and its omniscient and omnipotent peace. Thought clashes not with thought, and truth with truth. There is no war of right with rival right. There are no stumbling and half seeing lives, passing from chance to unexpected chance, no suffering of hearts compelled to beat in bodies of the inert inconscience make. Armed with the immune occult, unsinking fire, the guardians of eternity keep its law, forever fixed upon truth's giant base, in her magnificent and termless home. There, nature, on her dumb spiritual couch, immutably transcendent, knows her source, and to the stir of multitudinous worlds ascends unmoved in a perpetual calm, all causing, all sustaining, and aloof. The witness looks from his unshaken poise, an eye immense regarding all things done. Apart, at peace, above creation's stir, immersed in the eternal altitudes, he abode defended in his shoreless self, companioned only by the all-seeing One. A mind too mighty to be bound by thought, a life too boundless for the play in space. So here who is referring to? What is he referring to? Whose mind? The narrator? Yeah, so in that plane, so he is referring to Ashwapati, abode in that realm, defended in his shoreless self, companion only by the all-seeing One, which is the witness and the eye that is looking upon all things. A mind too mighty to be bound by thought, a life too boundless for the play in space, a soul without borders, unconvinced of time. He felt the extinction of the world's long pain. So here is the mind too mighty to be bound by thought is the mind that, it's Ashwapati's mind that is the description of. A mind too mighty to be bound by thought, a life too boundless for the play in space. So don't forget, Ashwapati has entered into this house of the spirit in the world of new creation. This is a plane of consciousness which is the consciousness that Sri Aurobindo describes as the highest over mental supramental plane. So this is actually a description of the Gnostic plane of consciousness. So there Ashwapati experiences and sees his highest self, and he sees that he alone is there with this. He's reached that plane after the surrender to the Divine Mother, which is the last, his yoga. And there now he reaches this plane. So this is a description of him there. A mind too mighty to be bound by thought, a life too boundless for the play in space, a soul without borders, unconvinced of time. He felt the extinction of the world's long pain. He became the unborn self that never dies. He joined the sessions of infinity. So this is, of course, a very high state of consciousness that Ashwapati achieves in this, and this is how he can bring down this, new creation, the new consciousness into the world because of his own spiritual realization, which is really the realization of the beyond the self. What is it? It is the triple transformation. This is the third transformation that is being described here, and the supramental transformation of Ashwapati. So, he felt the extinction of the world's long pain. He became the unborn self that never dies. He joined the sessions of infinity. On the cosmic murmur, primal loneliness fell. Annulled was the contact formed with time-born things. Empty grew nature's wide community. All things were brought back to their formless seed. The world was silent for a cyclic hour. Although the afflicted nature he had left maintained beneath him her broad, numberless fields, her enormous act, receding, failed, remote, as if a soulless dream at last had ceased. No voice came down from the high silences, none answered from her desolate solitudes. A stillness of cessation reigned, the wide, immortal hush before the gods are born. A universal force awaited, mute, the veiled transcendence, ultimate decree. Then suddenly there came a downward look, as if a sea exploring its own depths. A living oneness widened at its core and joined him to unnumbered multitudes. A bliss, a light, a power, a flame white love caught all into a soul immense embrace. Existence found its truth on oneness's breast, and each became the self and space of all. The great world rhythms were heartbeats of one soul. To feel was a flame discovery of God. All mind was a single harp of many strings. All life a song of many meeting lives. For worlds were many, but the self was one. This knowledge now was made a cosmos seed. This seed was cased in the safety of the light. It needed not a sheath of ignorance. Then, from the trance of that tremendous clasp, and from the throbbings of that single heart, and from the naked spirit's victory, a new and marvelous creation rose. Incalculable, outflowing infinitudes, laughing out an unmeasured happiness, lived their innumerable unity. Worlds where the being is unbound and wide, bodied unthinkably the egoless self. Rapture of beatific energies, join time to the timeless, poles of a single joy. White vasts were seen, where all is wrapped in all. There were no contraries, no sundered parts. All by spiritual links were joined to all, and bound indissolubly to the one. Each was unique, but took all lives as his own, and, following out these tones of the infinite, recognized in himself the universe. A splendid center of infinity's whirl, pushed to its zenith's height, its last expanse, felt the divinity of its own self-bliss, repeated in its numberless other selves. It took up tirelessly into its scope persons and figures of the impersonal, as if prolonging in a ceaseless count, in a rapturous multiplication sum, the recurring decimals of eternity. None was apart, none lived for himself alone. Each lived for God in him and God in all. Each soulness inexpressibly held the whole. Their oneness was not tied to monotone. It showed 1,000 aspects of itself. Its calm, immutable stability, upbore on a changeless ground forever safe, compelled to a spontaneous servitude, the ever-changing, incalculable steps, the seeming reckless dance's subtle plan of immense world forces in their perfect play. Appearance looked back to its hidden truth and made of difference oneness's smiling play. It made all persons fractions of the unique, yet all were being secret integers. All struggle was turned to a sweet strife of love in the harmonized circle of a sure embrace. Identities reconciling happiness gave a rich security to difference. It's an extremely different world. I mean, we are totally opposite to what this world is that Sri Aurobindo is describing here. And this is the world of the new creation. It is what he refers to as the overmental supermind creation, or the overman, or the Gnostic creation in the Life Divine, which you've read, where the last 5 chapters of the Life Divine, he describes this in great detail. So, of course, in Savitri, this is described in a poetic form in a few paragraphs. But you can see already from the wonderful description of this world how human beings and how this world, when it comes down, when it manifests on earth, will create a new kind of man, a new species, what the mother spoke of and what Satprem wrote of in The Adventure of New Consciousness, and a new earth. So this is the plane that Ashwapati has gone to after his darshan and his realization of the Supreme Divine Mother and his total surrender to the Absolute. And only then, when his entire being has become one, totally surrendered, and in fact, I think it is huge, complete. As we read last time, he pulled desire out from its bleeding roots. So every human aspect of the animal aspect and human aspect has been removed from his nature. Only then could he enter into this plane. Okay, so this is something to be read and to be experienced. While I think the mind is not able to comprehend it, you get glimpses of eternity, glimpses of truth. So, identity's reconciling happiness gave a rich security to difference. On a meeting line of hazardous extremes, the game of games was played to its breaking point, where through self-finding, by divine self-loss, there leaps out unity's supreme delight, whose blissful undivided sweetness feels a communality of the Absolute. There was no sob of suffering anywhere. Experience ran from point to point of joy. Bliss was the pure, undying truth of things. All nature was a conscious front of God. All nature, Prakriti, all nature was a conscious front of God in this world. A wisdom worked in all, self-moved, self-sure, a plenitude of illimitable light, an authenticity of intuitive truth, a glory and passion of creative force, infallible, leaping from eternity. The moment's thought inspired the passing act. A word, a laughter sprang from silence's breast, a rhythm of beauty in the calm of space, a knowledge in the fathomless heart of time. All turned to all without reserve's recoil, a single ecstasy without a break. Love was a close and thrilled identity in the throbbing heart of all that luminous life. A universal vision that unites, a sympathy of nerve replying to nerve, hearing that listens to thought's inner sound and follows the rhythmic meanings of the heart. A touch that needs not hands to feel, to clasp, were there the native means of consciousness and heightened the intimacy of soul with soul. A grand orchestra of spiritual powers, a diapason of soul interchange. So what does this mean? The diapason, it's a French word, of soul interchange. It's the sounding, from the word. I think it's an instrument. So, in any case, this particular passage completely is really the most clear description of the new world and the new man and the new human being. where speech is not required to communicate, where thought's inner sound is heard, where touch is not required for the hands to feel, a touch that needs not hands to feel to clasp, but they're the native means of consciousness. So everything was subtilized, was in a different mode, it was refined. The grossness of emotion, of human life, of human expression, of human communication, of human hearing, all the senses. Of course, we know of 5 senses, but all the 12 senses that the mother speaks of are here described. And these even are grosser senses of seeing and touch and hearing and smell and taste and thought have complete higher archetypes. And the high consummation of Sri Aurobindo's yoga. This is what he has brought down to earth. And this is the vision. And the words sounding beautiful, but these are experiences, very, very clear yogic experiences that can be had by anybody if they wish to. So it's from the musical. So when they all come together, and the height. So everybody in difference, but the difference has a harmony. Strife also has a harmony. Game of games. So Game of Thrones and the Game of Games. There's no suffering, there's no sorrow, obviously, because... And yet there are different hues and different tones. It's not like it's a sameness or a oneness that is uniform. There is a great amount of diversity. But there is a rhythm and there is a harmony. So a universal vision that unites, a sympathy of nerve replying to nerve. Can you understand that? Nerve replying to nerve, heart replying to heart. This is the communication is no longer gross. It's in its very refined state. A grand orchestra of spiritual powers, a diapason of soul interchange, harmonized, a oneness deep, immeasurable. In these new worlds projected, he became a portion of the universal gaze, a station of the all-inhabiting light, a ripple on a single sea of peace. So in these new worlds projected, he became, Ashwapati became. So worlds, you see, these are also in this overmental to the supermind, supramental world, there are also different worlds within them. It's not just one place you reach. There is a gradation there too. That's why the plurality of it, In these new worlds projected, he became a portion of the universal gaze, a station of the all-inhabiting light, a ripple on a single sea of peace. His mind answered to countless communing minds. His mind answered to countless communing minds. His words were syllables of the cosmos' speech. His life, a field of the vast cosmic stir. He felt the footsteps of a million wills, moving in unison to a single goal. A stream ever newborn that never dies, caught in its thousandfold current's ravishing flow, with eddies of immortal sweetness thrilled, he bore, coiling through his members as they passed, calm movements of interminable delight, the bliss of a myriad myriads who are one. Even to bear this is very, very difficult. Most bodies or most sheets, they would be shattered. So you have to have a huge preparation to be able to bear and to see and to go to the plane that Ashwapati has gone to. In this vast outbreak of perfection's law, imposing its fixity on the flux of things, he saw a hierarchy of lucent planes infused to this highest kingdom of God's state. So this idea, this is one of the main, if you notice all of Mother's letters to sadhaks and if you read her writings, the one thing that she constantly emphasizes and goes back to each time is harmony. Harmony is actually to be in a state of harmony. to be harmonious towards others, towards in one's work, in one's life, in one's relationships, in oneself is very difficult because it is one of the keynotes of the new consciousness. Harmony at all costs. The wonderful line of Life Divine, all problems of life are essentially problems of harmony. So, harmony is a very important spiritual attribute and consciousness that we need to consciously inculcate in our lives. So they are war with war, strife with strife. You see, constantly being in opposition to something or the other. Not being only when one is in a total state of harmony can one be peaceful. So the importance of peace, calm, quietness, harmony. These are things that you can constantly hear in Savitri and in many, many other places, and are extremely difficult for the human consciousness to do. Not only do we see that in our own lives, but we see it in the world all the time. So that's right. So the harmony is to do with the, Sri Aurobindo, I think it wrote, we used to do that, no? Thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. So the synthesis is the harmonious part of them. So there are two opposites, and how do you find something that can synthesize both these very difficult and opposing viewpoints, equally strident and equally holding some truths, into a larger truth. And for that you have to go above in your own consciousness, get out of your own egoistic self-will and egoistic point of view, and be able to see the other person's point of view and yet hold your own and yet bring towards both a harmony that reconciles. That is a natural state of being in this world. They function from that consciousness in that world. For us, we have to acquire it. In this vast outbreak of perfection's law, imposing its fixity on the flux of things, he saw a hierarchy of lucent planes infiefed to this highest kingdom of God's state. So this highest kingdom of God's state, of course, where Ashwapati is, from there he saw a hierarchy of lucent plane, attuning to one truth, their own right rule, each housed the gladness of a bright degree, alone in beauty, perfect in self-kind, an image cast by one deep truth's absolute, married to all in happy difference. Each gave its powers to help its neighbor's parts, but suffered no diminution by the gift. Profiters of a mystic interchange, they grew by what they took and what they gave. All others they felt as their own complements, one in the might and joy of multitude. Even in the poise where oneness draws apart, to feel the rapture of its separate selves, the soul in its solitude yearned towards the all, and the many turned to look back at the one. And all revealing, all creating bliss, seeking for forms to manifest truths divine, aligned in their significant mystery, the gleams of the symbols of the ineffable, blazoned like hues upon a colorless air, on the white purity of the witness soul. These hues were the very prism of the Supreme, His beauty, power, delight, creation's cause, a vast truth consciousness took up these signs, to pass them on to some divine child heart that looked on them with laughter and delight, and joyed in these transcendent images, living and real as the truths they house. The Spirit's white neutrality became a playground of miracles, a rendezvous for the secret powers of a mystic timelessness. It made of space a marvel house of God. It poured through time its works of ageless might, unveiled seen as alluring rapturous face, the wonder and beauty of its love and force. The eternal goddess moved in her cosmic house, sporting with God as a mother with her child. To him the universe was her bosom of love, his toys were the immortal verities. All here, self-lost, had there its divine place. The powers that here betray our hearts and air were there sovereign in truth, perfect in joy, masters in a creation without flaw, possessors of their own infinitude. There, mind, a splendid sun of vision's rays, shaped substance by the glory of its thoughts, and moved amidst the grandeur of its dreams. Imagination's great, ensorceling rod summoned the unknown and gave to it a home. Outspread luxuriantly in golden air, truth's iris-colored wings of fantasy, or sang to the intuitive heart of joy, wonder's dream notes that bring the real close. It's power that makes the unknowable near and true. In the temple of the ideal shrined the One. It peopled thought and mind and happy sense, filled with bright aspects of the might of God and living persons of the One Supreme. The speech that voices the ineffable, the ray revealing unseen presences, the virgin forms through which the formless shines, the word that ushers divine experience, and the ideas that crowd the infinite. There was no gulf between the thought and fact. Ever they replied like bird to calling bird. The will obeyed the thought, the act the will. There was a harmony woven twixt soul and soul, a marriage with eternity divinized time. There life pursued, unwearied of her sport, joy in her heart and laughter on her lips, the bright adventure of God's game of chance. In her ingenuous ardor of caprice, in her transfiguring mirth, she mapped on time a fascinating puzzle of events, lured at each turn by new vicissitudes to self-discovery that could never cease. Ever she framed stark bonds for the will to break, brought new creations for the thought's surprise, and passionate ventures for the heart to dare, where truth recurred with an unexpected face, or else repeated old familiar joy, like the return of a delightful rhyme. At hide and seek on a mother wisdom's breast, an artist teeming with her world idea, she never could exhaust its numberless thoughts and vast adventure into thinking shapes, and trial and lure of a new living's dreams, untired of sameness and untired of change. Endlessly she unrolled her moving act, a mystery drama of divine delight, a living poem of world ecstasy, a kekimono of significant forms, a coiled perspective of developing scenes, a brilliant chase of self-revealing shapes, an ardent hunt of soul looking for soul, a seeking and a finding as of gods. Their matter is the spirit's firm density, an artistry of glad outwardness of self, a treasure house of lasting images, where sense can build a world of pure delight, the home of a perpetual happiness. It lodged the hours as in a pleasant inn. The senses there were outlets of the soul. So it's a complete opposite of what is happening here on earth. Here the senses, the outlets of what? In our senses, the mind, the vital, the physical, right? Here in this plane, the senses are the outlets of the soul. Here in this plane of the new creation, of the new consciousness, matter is just the density of the spirit. So you can imagine this is the plane, pure, clear words. Sri Aurobindo is describing this through the travel of Ashwapati, who goes into this plane. Actually, Sri Aurobindo, who has gone into this plane, and he calls this plane the plane of the new creation, which of course in other places he calls as the Gnostic plane or the supramental planes, consciousness from in gradations, because even that is not just one place. So this is a kind of a harbinger. This is a glimpse that we can have today of what the earth's destiny is promised to be. What is the destiny of the earth? What is the future of mankind? And this is what Sri Aurobindo had come to do on earth, to try and manifest and bring down this force that could create these conditions on earth. So a wonderful, wonderful description. It's wonderful poetry, but actually it's a complete experience and a prophecy what will be. So, and here she, of course, is a reference to who? What is she brought this, the vast? Who is this she a reference to? All the time here. At hide and seek on a mother's wisdom breast, an artist, she never could exhaust its numberless thoughts and vast adventure into thinking shapes. A mystery drama of divine delight, a living poem, a coiled perspective, an ardent hunt of soul looking for soul, and so on. Sorry? She, higher nature. Yeah. Paraprakriti. The nature in its pure form. So the nature as in Prakriti, which is nature, which has come down and operating on the earth, is not the same nature. I mean, this is the origin of that nature, the source of that nature. That is Paraprakriti, or whatever, higher divine nature. So, the home of a perpetual happiness. It lodged the hours as in a pleasant inn. The senses there were outlets of the soul. Even the youngest child thought of the mind incarnated some touch of highest things. Even the youngest child thought of the mind. Do you know what that could be a reference to? It's obviously one of the senses, or one of the... What is the child thought of the mind? Even the youngest child thought of the mind incarnated some touch of highest things. There, substance was a resonant harp of self. So substance itself was a resonant harp of self, a net for the constant lightnings of the spirit, a magnet power of love's intensity, whose yearning throb and adoration's cry drew God's approaches close, sweet, wonderful. Its solidity was a mass of heavenly make. Its fixity and sweet permanence of charm made a bright pedestal for felicity. Its bodies woven by a divine sense prolonged the nearness of soul's clasp with soul. So here in this plane, everything was of a different make. Its bodies woven by a divine sense prolonged the nearness of soul's clasp with soul. Its warm play of external sight and touch reflected the glow and thrill of the heart's joy. Mind's climbing, brilliant thoughts, the spirit's bliss. Life's rapture kept forever its flame and cry. All that now passes lived immortal there, in the proud beauty and fine harmony of matter plastic to spiritual light. So all that now passes means is ephemeral, is mortal, lived there. All that now passes lived immortal there, in the proud beauty and fine harmony of matter plastic to spiritual light. Its ordered hours proclaimed the eternal law. Vision reposed on a safety of deathless forms. Time was eternity's transparent robe, an architect hewing out self's living rock. Phenomenon built reality's summer house on the beaches of the sea of infinity. Beautiful poetry here, but also very clear of this play. Now, as you know that there is evolution cannot take place unless anything that evolves is already involved. So these are the planes from which the new world is going to be created. We spoke about yesterday over there was this, this whole discussion on Aurobindo and what its purpose is. Well, here it is, because Aurobindo is meant to be the cradle of the new world, the cradle of the Superman. This is what the mother has said. And here is this description of this new society and new world that will manifest on earth. And harmony, peace, these are the attributes of this new world. Okay. And human unity. Why Mother was so very, very clear that human unity is going to be very important to achieve before this happens. So, against this glory of spiritual states, their parallels and yet their opposites, floated and swayed, eclipsed and shadow-like, as if a doubt-made substance, flickering pale, this other scheme two vast negations found. So against this glory of spiritual states, their parallels and yet their opposites floated and swayed, eclipsed and shadow-like, as if a doubt-made substance, flickering pale, this other scheme, two vast negations found. A world that knows not its inhabiting self, labors to find its cause and need to be, a spirit ignorant of the world it made, obscured by matter, travestied by life, struggles to emerge, to be free, to know and reign. These were close tied in one disharmony. Yet the divergent lines met not at all. Three powers governed its irrational course. In the beginning, an unknowing force. In the middle, an embodied striving soul. In its end, a silent spirit denying life. So this is very important. What do you think is happening here? Anyone? So why does he say, against this glory of spiritual states, their parallels and yet their opposites floated and swayed, eclipsed in shadow light. So he sees it. He's standing in this world of the new creation and he sees these parallel worlds, the shadows of this. It's very interesting. It's eclipsed and shadow-like, as if a doubt-made substance flickering pale. The other scheme, two vast negations found. This other scheme, what is this other scheme? What is he referring to? This other scheme. Yeah, these two opposites, the opposite schemes. This other scheme, two vast negations found. This opposite shadow-like, which swayed and floated, was founded on two vast negations. It's anchoring, it had those. So this other scheme, two vast negations found. What were the vast negations? One, a world that knows not its inhabiting self. Which world doesn't know its inhabiting self? Okay. A world that knows not its inhabiting self, labors to find its cause and need to be. And second, a spirit ignorant of the world it made. Which is this world that is ignorant of the spirit that made it? The two negations are on earth, which he can see, is the shadow of this plane that is floating in front. So, a spirit ignorant of the world it made, obscured by matter, travestied by life, struggles to emerge, to be free, to know and reign. These were close tied in one disharmony. So what is the attribute of earth and of our world? Disharmony at this point, and the negations of course are there, but you see, harmony, people think it's very easy. What does harmony mean? Why is harmony a quality and a spiritual state? Why do we call it spiritual? How many of us can live in harmony with each other, with ourselves, with our family, with our friends, with our colleagues? How many countries can live in harmony with each other? Why is there war and strife everywhere? This quality of disharmony is the absolute sign of ignorance and of an unspiritual, a state that is exactly opposite of what consciousness and a divine state is. So it is a sign of the lack of divinity and the sense of being. So therefore, we think that spiritual means giving up this world, going, and he's even written that right there. You'll see. That's a third. There are three things that are very dangerous. But that is not spirituality. Spirituality is to live in harmony. So why is the ideal of human unity the ideal of Aurobindo? Why is harmony the key note of Aurobindo? Because the new creation can only come out of harmony. We were just there yesterday for 3.5 hours talking about this. A lot of questions, so I'm just connecting the dots. But anyway, tell me how many of us carry harmony all the time? Have a harmonious equation with everybody? How difficult is it? Whether it's in our thoughts, whether it's in our feelings, whether it's in our actions. So this is an extremely important attribute to inculcate, to be always in a quiet, harmonious state. which doesn't mean that you have to do nothing and be nothing, but everything has to come from this source. Now, three powers governed its irrational cause. Whose irrational cause? Three powers governed its irrational cause. The earth's, in the beginning, an unknowing force. Yes? In the middle, an embodied, striving soul. In its end, a silent spirit denying life. So, three powers that govern its irrational cause. So, what are the great three powers? Yeah, these are in English, but yeah, they are equivalent to unknowing force. An unknowing force is something that one doesn't know how creation, the creative, I don't know, you can call it Brahma, you can call it, Maya, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. In the middle, an embodied striving soul. What is the embodied striving soul? In its end, a silent spirit denying life, moksha, nirvana, what else? All of that. So the whole of, yeah. So these are the three powers that govern presently the earth consciousness, right? A dull and infelicitous interlude unrolls its dubious truth to a questioning mind, compelled by the ignorant power to play its part and to record her inconclusive tale, the mystery of her inconscient plan, and the riddle of a being born from night by a marriage of necessity with chance. So, first of the powers, which is the unknowing force, and dull and infelicitous interlude unrolls its dubious truth to a questioning mind, compelled by the ignorant power to play its part and to record her inconclusive tale. The mystery of an inconscient plan and the riddle of a being born from night by a marriage of necessity with chance. This darkness hides our nobler destiny, a chrysalis of a great and glorious truth. It stifles the winged marvel in its sheath, lest from the prison of matter it escape, and, wasting its beauty on the formless vast, merged into the unknowable's mystery, leave unfulfilled the world's miraculous fate. So, a wonderful explanation of why the importance of matter. Matter has a very important role, keeps in case the spirit so that it doesn't escape and disappear and forget its destiny of transforming the whole of earth into the density of the spirit. So this is its true purpose. Even the inconscient and ignorance has a very, very important role and is also part of the divine plan. So, a chrysalis is
The case of the change of the butterfly.
from which the butterfly comes out. A chrysalis of a great and glorious truth. It stifles the winged marvel in its sheath. Yeah, the same butterfly, moth pupa's sheath, this thing. It stifles the winged marvel in its sheath, lest from the prison of matter it escape, and, wasting its beauty on the formless vast, merged into the unknowable's mystery, leave unfulfilled the world's miraculous fate. As yet, thought only some high spirit's dream, or a vexed illusion in man's toiling mind, a new creation from the old shall rise. These sentences of Sri Aurobindo suddenly come in between. So here is this wonderful revelatory words of prophecy. And as yet, he says, thought only some high spirit's dream, or a vexed illusion in man's toiling mind, a new creation from the old shall rise. A knowledge inarticulate find speech, beauty suppressed burst into paradise bloom, pleasure and pain dive into absolute bliss. A tongueless oracle shall speak at last, the superconscient, conscious grow on earth, the eternal's wonders join the dance of time. So after just these, 5 lines, a new creation from the old shall rise, a knowledge in inarticulate fine speech, beauty suppressed burst into paradise bloom, Pleasure and pain dive into absolute bliss. A tongueless oracle shall speak at last. The superconscient conscious grow on earth. The eternal's wonders join the dance of time. Then he says, but now all seemed a vainly teeming vast, upheld by a deluded energy, to a spectator self-absorbed and mute, careless of the unmeaning show he watched, regarding the bizarre procession pass, like one who waits for an unexpected end. He saw a world that is from a world to be. There he divined rather than saw or felt. Far off upon the rim of consciousness, transient and frail, this little whirling globe, and on it left, like a lost dream's vain mold, a fragile copy of the spirit's shell. So what now? Again he, from this revelation that Ashwapati, feels and is describing, then he suddenly goes back into this witness mode of seeing this, but now all seemed, because he's watching this, what he just described as the shadow and the two negations. So, to a spectator self-absorbed and mute, careless of the unmeaning show he watched. What is he referring to here? To a spectator. Which spectator? Careless and mute? The witness. So, upheld by deluded energy, to a spectator self-absorbed and mute, careless of the unmeaning show he watched, regarding the bizarre procession pass, like one who waits for an expected end. He saw a world that is from a world to be. So he saw the world as it is, and that is from a world as it should be. There he divined rather than saw or felt. Far off upon the rim of consciousness, transient and frail, this little whirling globe of the earth, and on it left, like a lost dream's vain mold, a fragile copy of the spirit's shell, his body gathered into mystic sleep, a foreign shape it seemed, a mythic shade. So what is this last bit? His body gathered into mystic sleep. Whose body? Ashwapati's body. From this experience of seeing the two worlds and juxtaposing them and seeing all that, and his body gathered into a mystic sleep, he himself, Ashwapati, goes deep into a mystic sleep, a foreign shape it seemed, a mythic shade. Alien now seemed that dim far universe. So from where Ashwapati was, that dim far universe, the earth, almost seemed an alien shape. An alien now seemed that dim far universe. Self and eternity alone were true. Then memory climbed to him from the striving plains, bringing a cry from once loved. Yes. So he starts coming down into his physical body. He goes into his subtle body, into his physical frame. So this is the end of the vision that Ashwapati has of the new creation, of the house of the new creation. Alien now seemed that dim far universe. Self and eternity alone were true. Self with a capital S, that is the self, not the ego self, but the real self. Self and eternity alone were true. Then memory climbed to him from the striving plains, bringing a cry from once loved, cherished things. And to the cry, as to its own lost call, a ray replied from the occult supreme. For even there, the boundless oneness dwells. So where is this? For even there? There is reference to where? The earth. So here's a cry from once loved, cherished things, and to the cry as to its own lost call, a ray replied from the occult supreme. For even there the boundless oneness dwells. To its own sight unrecognizable. It lived still, sunk in its own tenebrous seas, upholding the world's inconscient unity, hidden in matter's insentient multitude. This seed self, sown in the indeterminate, forfeits its glory of its divinity. So this oneness that, that is dwelling in the earth, which is an occult supreme, which is hidden. It is boundless oneness dwells. It's hidden from its own sight. It lives sunk in the tenebrous seas of the inconscient, the world's inconscient unity, and it is hidden in matter's insentient multitude. This seed self, sown in the indeterminate, forfeits its glory of divinity, concealing the omnipotence of its force, concealing the omniscience of its soul, an agent of its own transcendent will. It merges knowledge in the inconscient deep, accepting error, sorrow, death, and pain. It pays the ransom of the ignorant night, redeeming by its substance nature's fall. So this seed self, which is the same self which is outside, which is the eternal self, is hidden in matter, and it forfeits its glory there, conceals its omnipotence, conceals its omniscience, and then is an agent of its own transcendent will. It merges knowledge in the inconscient deep, accepting error, sorrow, death, and pain. It pays the ransom of the ignorant night, redeeming by its substance nature's fall. Himself he knew, and why his soul had gone into earth's passionate obscurity to share the labor of an errant power which by division hopes to find the one. So here Ashwapati knew himself and why his soul had gone into the earth's passionate obscurity to share the labor of an errant power which by division hopes. This errant power, what does errant power mean? Which by division hopes to find the one. So which power is it that by division hopes to find the power? What is this errant power? Yes, mind, ego, the whole, but division, divisiveness comes in from the ego and the mind plane and the vital plane. So it's the ego, it's a plane of division, that power of the ego that has gone in. The ego is also a delicate power of the divine, which has gone once it goes, that's why it's errant. Why is the word errant used? You know the meaning of errant? Yeah, who deviates from its original source. So, himself he knew and why his soul had gone into earth's passionate obscurity to share the labor, the burden of the errant power, which by division hopes to find the one. Two beings he was, one wide and free above, one struggling, bound, intense, its portion here. A tie between them still could bridge two worlds. There was a dim response, a distant breath. All had not ceased in the unbounded hush. So a tie between these two beings, that there were two beings of Ashwapati that he was conscious of. We are unconscious of our other part of our being, aren't we? So the more you are evolved, the more you evolve, the more conscious you become of yourself, of the other self. So there was a dim response, a distant breath. All had not ceased in the unbounded hush. His heart lay somewhere, conscious and alone, far down below him, like a lamp in night. Abandoned it lay, alone, imperishable. Why abandoned it lay? Because his body and his spirit were above self. Abandoned it lay, alone, imperishable, immobile with excess of passionate will, his living, sacrificed, and offered heart, absorbed in adoration mystical. See, while he traveled to all these planes in his subtle bodies, in the spiritual body, or whatever you want to call it, sheets, his heart was still in adoration of the Divine Mother on earth. His psychic being had become so large that his entire heart had become psychicized. Do you understand? His emotional, vital being had become totally transformed into the psychic. And that was below in sacrificial prayer to the Divine Mother. To her it turned alone and no one else. So these are again very, very important mystical occult poetry that can give you an indication of the practice of the integral yoga. For those who want to practice Sri Aurobindo's yoga, it is to the Divine Mother alone that the whole surrender has to be made. It is she who transforms the self. So, his living, sacrificed and offered heart, absorbed in adoration mystical, turned to its far-off fount of light and love. In the luminous stillness of its mute appeal, it looked up to the heights it could not see. It yearned from the longing depths it could not leave. In the center of his vast and fateful trance, halfway between his free and fallen selves, interceding twixt God's day and the mortal's night, accepting worship as its single law, accepting bliss as the sole cause of things, refusing the austere joy which none can share, refusing the calm that lives for calm alone. To her it turned, to the mother. To her it turned, for whom it willed to be. In the passion of its solitary dream, it lay like a closed, soundless oratory where sleeps a consecrated argent floor, lit by a single and untrembling ray, and an invisible presence kneels in prayer. On some deep breast of liberating peace, all else was satisfied with quietude. This only knew there was a truth beyond. All other parts were dumb in centered sleep, consenting to the slow, deliberate power which tolerates the world's error and its grief, consenting to the cosmic long delay, timelessly waiting through the patient years. Her coming they had asked for earth and men. This was the fiery point that called her now. So Ashwapati's heart turned, his whole psychicized being turned to the mother alone, and asked, as an invisible presence kneels in prayer on some deep breast of liberating peace. This only knew there was a truth beyond, while all the other parts were dumb in centered sleep, tolerating the world's error and grief, consenting to the cosmic long delay, timelessly waiting through the patient years. Her coming they had asked for earth and men. This was the fiery point that called her now. Ashwapati's heart and his psychic being was the fiery point that called the mother down, that called her now. Extinction could not quench that lonely fire. So there was no question of going into, obviously he knew that there was this nirvanic bliss of everlasting bliss that was there, extinction, what they call. But even that did not stop him from calling and could not quench that lonely fire of having the Divine Mother enter into earth and to manifest on earth. This was the fiery point that called her now. Extinction could not quench that lonely fire. Its seeing filled the blank of mind and will. Thought dead, its changeless force abode and grew, armed with the intuition of a bliss to which some moved tranquility was the key. It persevered through life's huge emptiness. Amid the blank denials of the world, it sent its voiceless prayer to the unknown. It listened for the footsteps of its hopes. Returning through the void immensities, it waited for the fiat of the word that comes through the still self from the Supreme. So this is what Ashwapati sacrificed, heart and his yearning for the Divine Mother, his call in prayer to her to come down on earth. It waited for the fiat of the Word, with a capital W, the Word, the divine Word, that comes through the still self from the Supreme. So that Word that he waited for, that would give him the darshan and the vision and the boon. It waited for the fiat of the Word that comes through the still self from the Supreme. End of Canto 3. Canto 4, the vision and the boon. So he gets his deepest prayer, he gets the vision and the boon that the mother gives him, the Divine Mother. And that is the most wonderful canto of the book, which we will read next time. So the mother sends who? As her child? Savitri. As Ashwapati's child. As her vision and boon. Boon to Ashwapati's yearning heart. So you get to know who is Savitri.